Hey, what's up guys? This is Johan, and on this video we'll be talking water changes. Alright guys, so let's start this video off right here by my saltwater tanks, the quarantine, the 10-gallon office tank, and the 20-gallon nano. If you notice how low the water is, it's actually quite low. I haven't been able to top off the water for almost 4 or 5 days, and that's a lot of evaporation in that little bit of time. So just under a week, and the evaporation is just going crazy. And the reason I haven't been able to top off or do a proper water change is this part of my RDI filter. If you notice, there is a crack right there. If we'll focus on this. So yeah, there's a crack right there, and what happened is I was tightening it, and I tightened it a little bit too tight, and then I cracked it. So what I had to do is just go ahead, and I went ahead and ordered some new stuff. It's in February, so it's about 6 months since I've changed out all my resins. This is a reusable one, so you could just refill it. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. And whilst I'm doing that, we are going to be talking about should you do water changes, and how often should you do them. Alright guys, so we are here in my little water change area. This is basically my laundry room. See my dryer, washer right here. So we're just gonna basically start off this video by me changing my little filters, and this is the one I use. It's about 75 gallons a day. It has a de-irising package, which is right here. I just have it open here. The carbon cartridge, a pre-filter, and then your actual RO membrane. Alright, so most of these come with a water flow indicator of where the water should go through. So it shows down. I guess they changed the package on these. The last time I bought it, it was just basically black, and this one has red, and this one has white. So the first set I got with the first time I bought this, it was just push connect. It is push connects, but it is a these are threaded push connects, so threaded to then push, and then I have some what you call on here, Teflon tape, so I have to reapply the Teflon tape. Alright, so here's the Teflon tape, and then I usually just put it against the way of twisting. So if I'm turning this way to tighten, it's gonna go with the way of tighten, sorry, not against, but so it doesn't come unraveled. Whoop. I hate when that happens. So just go around it. Like I say, you probably don't need this, but I always do it because I don't want any leaks at all. Twist it on here, and then repeat the process. So I'm gonna leave this video run, head to the voiceover portion of this, and basically do a quick little overview of this one. Alright guys, so time for the voiceover section where we go over the reasons we want to do water changes, and just sit back and enjoy the view of my aquarium. my aquariums and me doing a water change whilst I talk about it. So we're just going to talk about the benefits of doing a water change and what we can achieve in our saltwater aquariums. Alright guys, so this video basically came about from one of you guys who asked the question, how often do you do water changes, and different things that would make you know when to do a water change if it's basically testing. I'll put the name right up here. So we're going to discuss that today. For me personally, when I originally started in this hobby, water changes have, and even still now, has always been my main source of nutrient export. And even now with me growing corals, it is another way of me adding elements back into my system. So elements like my alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, and also stuff like trace elements and any other different things that the reef needs that I could replace with just doing the water change. Alright guys, so let's start off with water changes that help with nutrient export. So one of the main ways we use to export nutrients, especially as new hobbyists, and if you're just getting into the hobby, the easiest way to lower your nutrients is to do a water change. Now if you guys know, when we do start the aquarium, we go through that nitrogen cycle where we build up bacteria that breaks down ammonia and nitrite and then convert that into nitrogen gas. Now when you're just starting off, you don't really have any way of removing that nitrate in your aquarium. You don't have any way of removing it. The best way to remove it, or at least to dilute it, is to do a water change, and that will be, you know, taking out some water. And once you take out some water, then that nitrate goes with the old water, and when you put new water back in, it basically dilutes it. So I want you to think of your aquarium as, let's say, this is a crude little example or analogy, but think of yourself in your restroom and in the morning, whatever, and you take a number 2. And you're just in the closed room and there's no exhaust fan, just that you take your number 2. It kind of stinks, you know, just you in there, and you're doing a water change. Basically, you're opening the window and blowing some of the air out, so some of that stinky stuff gets out in the air. And then, you know, think of the same thing as nitrates. So when the bacteria breaks down all the waste that's in the aquarium, then you have that nitrate that's lingering. So you do a water change to basically remove the excess nitrates. And in doing the water change as well, then you also can remove some of the waste before it gets broken down, some of the uneaten food, and then, you know, just replenish some other nutrients, which we'll get into later. Now when we're doing the water change, we're trying to, like I say, lower our nutrients as far as like the nitrates, and there's also another element called phosphates, PO4 and NO3. I may refer to them as nitrates as NO3 and PO4 for phosphates. So, or I might just call them what they are. Actually, nitrates and phosphates is actually easier. So one of the things that's going to determine how often you do your water changes, or how much water changes do you need to do, is the amount of fish or the amount of coral and also your feeding. So basically the barrier load that your aquarium is going under. Now if you use, let's say, my 20-gallon nano, for example, all I have in there is coral at the moment, and they're basically large coral, but I do a lot of feeding. And to determine how much you gotta do your water changes, you have to first of all test your aquarium. So once your aquarium is started and you go through your nitrogen cycle, you test your system, and then you see, you know, you start seeing trends. You start seeing that, you know, your nitrates are at 0, ammonia at 0, nitrates at 0, phosphates at 0. Then you get your first fish. You add your first fish, and then you start feeding it, you know, daily or twice a day, 3 times a day, depends on, you know, what you're doing. And then you start testing your system, and then you start seeing that, hey, you know, every time I feed, if I feed heavy, 4 or 5 days later, my nitrates went from 0, and it's all the way up to 10 or 20, whatever. So you might, you know, think I could do a water change to lower that nitrate factor. And another thing you might want to do is, you know, feed less, which is another way of, you know, limiting your water changes. So you feed less, and then you test again, you know, every day or 4 days later, and you see, hey, I fed less and my nitrates are maintained at, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, whatever. And that's kind of low. Then, you know, you go down the road, you start getting used to that. Then you start, you know, you want to add 3, 4 more fish. You add those fish, and then you start doing the same amount of feed in, or a little bit more because you have more fish. And then you test your system again, and then you see, oh shit, the nitrates are a lot higher. So that first fish, you probably need to do one water change a month, and that was just it. But then once you added more fish and started feeding more, you start seeing that that one water change you do once a month is not enough to keep up with the amount of waste that all your fish are producing. So you may have to do 2 water changes a month, or you might have to do a water change, 4 water changes, 1 water change every week, every weekend, or whenever your day off is. For me, my day off is Tuesday, so I will do a water change every Tuesday or every Wednesday. Another thing that will determine how much water change you do, or how much water change that you need to do, is the size of your aquarium. Now, if you have a nano system that is lightly stocked, and you do 1 water change every week, and that seems to be good for you. If you have a larger system, for example, if I'm using my 20-gallon nano again, I need to do water change every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and I only have coral and different things in there like clam and whatnot. But then I have a 75-gallon with, let's say, 2 fish, 3 fish in there. I may not need to do a water change as much because I have more water volume. That 75-gallon has a tank, the main display itself with live rock, and then it also has a sump. So it's basically a 90 to 100-gallon system. So I have more water volume to play with. On smaller systems, I may not have that water volume to play with. The water is easily or quickly, more readily, more fastly polluted by my fish versus the 75-gallon. So going back to our first analogy where you're sitting on the potty or whatever, and you're doing number 2, you're in a small bathroom, and you open up a window to try to let some of that air out, or you turn on the vent fan to basically pull some new air in. Just to pull some new air in, thinking of it as a water change, you're changing the air. Now you're in a bigger room, and you do your number 2, and the air smells fine. It smells just in your area, but you could walk across the room, it doesn't smell that bad. You could still do a water change, and to reduce that air smell. Same thing back in the aquarium again. Smaller system, the nitrates and phosphates and the waste is gonna be a little bit more potent in that small aquarium versus it's much more diluted in a bigger aquarium. Now you're still gonna want to do your water changes on your bigger system. There are things you could do to reduce the amount of water change that you need to do. So one of the things, like we just spoke about, having a larger system, if you don't have the space and all that, it's understandable. I've been there, living in an apartment where I can't have a big system, and I'm on the second floor, but let's say you do have a bigger system and you do have a lot of fish, and you are feeding heavily because you want to maintain and have fat fish, healthy coral. One of the things you could do to lessen the amount of water change you want to do is to have a protein skimmer. Now, a protein skimmer is not necessary. I did not mention it up until this point because it's not a necessity, but it does help you reduce the amount of water changes that you have to do. And especially if you are a busy person, you're working a lot and you don't have time to schedule a water change, even though you have a day off, you might have something else you have to do. That protein skimmer, once you use it, it actually helps you push back some time you need to do a water change, because it basically removes some of that dissolved organics, and it does basically a small water change, a controlled overflow, as some people would say. It's basically a controlled overflow, and it's doing a water change on a smaller level. So it's giving you time, buying you time whilst you're not doing that water change. So you could push back the amount of time you need to do the water change. Another thing you could do is get a refugium. A refugium is basically another aquarium or another tank that you grow macroalgae or some sort of coral, like a green star polyp or zinnia. I've seen some people use zinnia and green star polyp to suck up the excess nitrates that's in your system. And what you want to do is, as your macroalgae grows, you want to harvest that, and as you take off the macroalgae, that basically remove some nitrates and phosphates. The macroalgae uses the nitrate and the phosphate to grow, just like if you would think like romaine lettuce. To grow romaine lettuce, nitrates are really required because it's a leafy vegetable. Now, another reason we want to do our water changes, besides reducing nitrates and phosphates, is to start replenishing our system, especially if you have coral, and even if you just have a fish-only system. There are certain things that's in our pre-salt mix that our fish do use, that at least I believe that our fish can't just get from food. But going back to what I said, that we want to replenish elements such as calcium, alkalinity, and any trace elements. There are different ways you could actually add those with different additives, but for the most part, as a new hobbyist with a new tank, even though you are experienced, you could basically replenish all of those with water changes if you have a light load of coral or when your tank just started. So every time you do a water change, 25, 50, 100% water change. I've seen some people do 100% water change. Every time you do a water change, you basically putting back those elements into your system so that your corals could grow, your fish are healthy, and then your corals could get all those little elements they need to, like the calcium, to start building up their skeleton to grow bigger, stronger, and look as beautiful as they need to be in the aquarium. And then different things like trace elements, phosphate, not phosphates, potassium. You could also dose that as well, but some salt mix do have that in it, and I think most salt mix do have that in it, so you wouldn't need to dose. It's just your coral will be able to suck it up. Now when you want to start dosing is when your corals are outcompeting the amount of water changes you do. So your system is going really nice and really well, and your corals are growing really, really fast, and no matter how much water changes you do, it just can't seem to keep up your alkalinity or your calcium, whatever, and that you just have to start dosing to keep up with that. But for the most part, when you're just starting off, a water change usually fixes most of any missing trace elements. Another reason we may want to do a water change is if you have any temperature issues. So let's say your tank is extremely hot for some reason, a heater fails, something. An easy way of getting your temperature down is to do a water change. Now in this case you wouldn't want to do a big water change to shock your system. You would want to do let's say if you have a 20-gallon system, you'd want to do a cup. Let's say you have your system mixed up. You want to do about 2 or 3 cups every hour, and that will lower the temperature with cooler water. Just scoop out 5 cups or whatever. Replace 5 cups of new water, and then that's basically going to lower your temperature of the water. And just keep testing the temperature of the water as you do that change. Now, another thing we could do with water changes besides just exporting nutrients is if you have a algae outbreak, or if you have a sandbed that you need to clean, you could use your water changes to clean out your sandbed. And think if you are experiencing hair algae right now, and your nitrous are 0 or whatever, think of your hair algae or whatever bryopsis that you have in your system. Think of that hair algae as your refugium, and remember what I said earlier. To actually get your refugium to work well, besides the Cheeto or whatever macroalgae growing, you have to remove it. So whilst you're doing your water change, go ahead and pick out some of that hair algae, or pick out as much as you can, because once you take that hair algae out, it's taking some nitrogen and phosphates with it. So even though your tank may look a little bit ugly right now because of the hair algae, go ahead and use the hair algae as a refugium for now, whilst you're working on getting rid of the hair algae and working in your nitrates and phosphates. Take the hair algae out, and you will be able to get some of that nitrate out that's in the water system and in the hair algae. And whilst you're doing the water changes, also allow you to clean your sandbed. It depends on how deep your sandbed is. If you do it weekly, then you just want to take out some of the waste. If you have a sandbed, I know a lot of people right now go bare bottom, and when they do a water change, they just take out the little waste that pulls up in one little corner. Alright guys, so that pretty much wraps it up for what we use the water changes for me personally, it's mainly just for two main reasons. One is to export, remove any unwanted stuff that's in our aquarium. Maybe it's excess algae, excess nutrients, maybe a dead fish, or maybe something that's in your sand bed. Maybe somebody accidentally spills a beer in your system, or overdoses your system, or overfeeds your system whilst you're in a home, or maybe you did it accidentally. Water changes help remove and export all the bad stuff that we don't want in our aquarium. And the next reason, which I think we use water changes for, is to replenish anything that we took out or that is being used up. For example, if you are not dosing your system, or you don't have a calcium reactor, and you want to replace your elements like alkalinity and calcium and your magnesium and any of your trace elements, doing a water change will replenish those elements. So that's pretty much most of the things that I use it for. I bet there are a few other reasons why you guys could think. If you guys have any comments or any questions, go ahead and leave those down below, because they do feel videos like this. I have a few other videos that's coming for the pipeline. We've just been kind of busy with work, and so once I get some time, I come out and make some videos. So if you guys like this video, go ahead and hit the like button down below, and also remember to subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.